Today we are looking at the histogram and the basic adjustment tools in Adobe Photoshop. So I am in the photography workspace. You can get to that by going Window, Workspace, Photography, or click in the upper right hand corner and click on Photography. If you are in the photography workspace, in the upper right you will see something called a histogram. And that's the main tool we're using today. If yours doesn't look the way mine does, you're going to click on the hamburger tool and make sure that you have it on expanded view. So it may look like this. That is the compact view. You can also have an all channels view, so it's going to split up the red, green, and blue channels. But today we're going to be using the expanded view. And I also have mine on luminosity. It defaults to be RGB, but you can turn it on luminosity because that's the main thing that we're looking at. What the histogram is going to show us is the range of tonal values. The darker ones to over this side, midtones, and then the highlights. So if you look at this, is a pretty well exposed image, and it goes all the way across all of the tonal range. But everyone is going to look different. For instance, this photo, we have a lot in the mid-range. This little boy and what he's wearing. We don't have a lot of things that are very, very dark, and we don't have things that are very, very light. So every photo is going to look different when you call up the histogram. So all of these photos I have certain issues. I'm going to zoom into this, Alt and scroll your mouse so you can zoom in. And you can see that this is a very gray photo. We don't have any true blacks or any true whites. So there's several ways that you can deal with this. And the way you do it is to add adjustment layers. So there's several places you can get to this. A lot of people, if you are in photography workspace, a lot of people like to just click on it right here, and you certainly can. That's just not where I choose to do it, but you absolutely can click on it. Where I like to click on it is down in the cookie of the layers. It looks like a little black and white cookie. If you click on that, you'll see the four main adjustment layer tools: brightness, contrast, levels, curves, and exposure. And they all work. They can work together, and you can choose which one does best. So I'm going to use all four of them so you can see how they do differently. So brightness and contrast is the first one. If you don't have a lot to do to one, just add a little bit of brightness. That's kind of an easy one to do. The problem with brightness and contrast is it's going to bring up everything at the same level. So it's almost, think as if there is a line across your histogram and you're just bringing it straight up. So if we up the brightness, it's going to bring everything up, the things that don't need to be brought up and the things that do need to be brought up. So brightness and contrast could be something that we want to use. And this is already looking better. One of the problems with this is the contrast, which is the difference between blacks and whites. Everything looks the same. Everything looks gray. I'm going to reset this by clicking the little kind of go back. I'm going to click auto and see what the computer thinks we should do. So you can see it's kind of thinking. Give it a second. Okay, so you can see that it added, it took down the brightness, but it brought the contrast up as far as it possibly could. And it still isn't very good. All of this still looks washed out. I don't think I would crank it down even more than that. When you're over in the layers panel, you can turn the eyeball on and off here in your layers to see before and after. I don't think brightness and contrast is the best choice for this one, but I did want to show it to you. I'm actually going to delete this. If you just pick it up and throw it down into the trash can. And let's try a different one. I'm going to go to the cookie, and this time I'm going to choose levels. So what levels does is it kind of shows you here is the things that are on this side, and here's this. And you're seeing we don't have anything that is a true black. Black should be all the way over here at 0. What you're going to do is pick this up and go, you know what, computer? That is the blackest thing that's on the screen. In fact, let's crunch that over even more. Do you see what it has done to the histogram? It has made it more level before, after. So I think levels is a better adjustment. Let's kind of bring that down. And of course, this is our mid-range. Can bring our mid-range down even more. This photo was so out of gamut that it's looking pixelated. Let's zoom in again, of course, Alt, scroll your mouse. You can see it's looking bad. That's one of the reasons you want to try to get things the best you can in camera and not just try to fix them in post. But you can see with this photo, probably levels was going to be a better choice than brightness and contrast. But if you just have a little bit to do, Brightness and contrast is an easy one to do. Okay, I'm going to look at the next one I have. This one, Alt Scroll. This one is very dark. You can see its histogram goes all the way over to the left. So there's several ways that we could try and fix this one. I'm actually going to use a new one that we haven't used yet called Exposure. So you may remember from photography, just adding a stop, that type of an idea. If you look in the defaults, in fact, -1 stop, -2 stops, you can just add a stop. That's the idea of that. So if I up the exposure, you can see that it's bringing up, it brought up kind of everything and it made it more level. This is looking a little blown out. It is looking like it's been adjusted. You kind of have to go very far on this one because it's so far out. I'm going to go ahead and reset this, and let's talk about gamma. If you've never messed gamma before, what gamma correction does is instead of moving everything up in a straight line like I was talking about with brightness and contrast, it moves things in a curve. So it's going to bring up just the midtones. So instead of bringing everything up in a straight line, it's going to bring everything up in a curve. So just things in the middle are going to be raised. This time, instead of bringing up exposure, I'm going to mess with gamma. And it always is backwards from the way I think. I always feel like you should go that direction, but it's this direction. Can you see the difference in what is happening here? It's just bringing up kind of the mid, and it didn't mess with everything over here quite as much. This is a much nicer way to fix it. Now, I kind of would do a little bit of both, maybe just a little bit of the regular exposure. And this isn't going to be perfect. So that is dealing with exposure. Make sure to use gamma correction if you have things that are in the midtone. So a lot of people would look at this and think there's not a whole lot wrong with this, but we can still get better. Let's look at this, just levels that we used on the first photo. And you can see it's pretty good. It doesn't look all that bad, but it really pops it if we just do a simple levels. So here is before and after. It really needed just a little bit of help. Now, another thing that you can consider do, I actually think we'll adjust that just a tad in the middle. You can also do each separate part. So maybe we want to add just a little bit more green to it in the shadow. In the lights. Pull it down in the shadows just to pop that green a little bit. Or the same thing with the red if you want to pop the red. So start messing around with the different things with the red and the green and the blue, the different channels, and you can really make some different adjustments. This next one, this is a pretty famous photo of Venice. I've never been there, but apparently everybody takes this photo. There are a lot of details in here that we cannot see. And you probably know that underexposed photos are much easier to fix than overexposed. So I'm going to go and add a curves adjustment to this. And you can see that curves kind of looks like the way levels did. In fact, you could just use this as if it's levels. And that's already helping some. But what's good about this is it's got a curve that you can do. I'm just going to start messing with it. I'm not very good messing with it this way. There's some people who can just start clicking on it and fix it with all these curves themselves. You'll see when you start messing with it, it's very easy to mess up very quickly. So I don't like to do it that way. I'm going to go ahead and reset this like we did the other ones. And what I like to do is tell it auto and let the computer try and fix it. And you can see that's the curve it made. Then go grab this little hand and go and click and drag either up or down to try to fix the photo yourself. I'm going to click and drag either up or down. I need a little bit more with this. Do you see all that detail I'm getting back? Look at all the detail that is just pulled out in this mid-range. And you can see that it has added a couple of dots from what I've done. Now this area is getting a little bit too bright. I'm going to click and drag down on the sky and look at how we're getting all that back into the sky. It's added another dot for me. Pull this up a little bit more, this down. Oh, that one's always hard. Let me undo that part. There we go, back up. It's not a perfect situation. And of course, the same as we did in the other, we can go and get, say, the blue channel and we want the highlights up here to have more blue. So you can either do something by kind of just grabbing it and pulling the blue up just a tad. You see the blue coming into the highlights? We want them up here. Now, we don't want any blues down in our dark. In fact, you can even click and drag down in the dark so that our blues don't get too, in the shadows, we don't want them to turn. I think I need a little bit more luminance over here now that I'm doing, there we go. So anyway, do you see how it's making, you can see my blue level back there has changed? Just to show you craziness, let's go add some red for no particular reason. There's some red back into it. And you can still use this tool to add red. Say we really want some red up here in the sky. There we go. You see that big curve that it made? Now, I don't know why you would kind of want to do that, but you certainly can. The green, there's not a lot that would be green in here. So curves, you can, of course, you know, I don't think you'd want it to be this extreme, but you absolutely can go this extreme. So the next one has a lot of problems, but this is the type of thing that we would have with a lot of snapshots. You can see that the camera did not know what to do with this type of exposure. We had darkness and lightness, and it was trying to fix it. So what you're going to have to do here is, there's not one thing that you could do. You might have to do one or two different exposures. This exposure is pretty good. It's a little bit blown out, but it's not that bad. So I'm going to fix this one with, you could try a lot of them, but I think I'm going to do exposure and try that one. So I'm going to go ahead and not worry about what happens to the background. I'm just going to worry about the little girl. Let's try and get that little girl as good as we can. All right. Yeah, she's looking a lot better. And of course, this is all blown out. We've completely lost the sky. We've lost all these details. Let me zoom in on her. And you can see that this really, it does look as if it has been adjusted because this photo is really kind of too far gone. There's some other tools that we could use to try to fix that up. But as far as the exposure goes, we can see her now. But of course, we can't deal with this in the background. All of these adjustment layers have an automatic layer mask added to them. Right here is our layer mask. So if you click right here, you can see we're on the exposure. We're on that level. If you click right here, you can see we are now on the layer mask. So the deal with layer masks is white to reveal, black to conceal. You'll notice that when we have the mask clicked on, we automatically have white and black as our two colors. So all we're going to do is we are going to flip to black because black is for conceal. We're going to go get the brush tool, and up here we can change the size of the brush and the hardness. I would get about a 65 to 75% hard brush, and you can see that little circle is the brush, our brush size. Sorry, I clicked away. You can up your brush size by using the bracket keys. Bracket key down, bracket key up. So and then we can just literally brush away the part of the adjustment level that we don't want. So you can see over here, it is now adding that black, so it is not letting that adjustment layer work. Whatever is black, the adjustment layer is not going to be there. So of course, now when we get down that we need details, we can make our brush a little bit smaller, bracket keys, Alt, zoom in, and now we can see what we're doing and kind of get this a little bit better. Now I'm not going to sit here and mess with this all day. This is the basic idea. Let's get that even smaller. Now let's say we wanted a little bit of the adjustment layer, but not all of it. We zoom back out. Say we want a little bit of it to be working over here. We can get our tool and going to put white to add it back in. So for instance, I can add the adjustment back in with white. You see, I just wrote that on there. Haha. But if I bring the opacity down to say 70% with a nice big fluffy brush, I'm sorry, did I say 70%? Bring it down to about 35% with a fluffy brush. I can add back in some of the adjustment layer through opacity. So if you look at the mask, you can see I've got a little bit of an area of gray. So I want a little bit of this adjustment layer to work right in here, but not all of it. So that is the idea behind this. Of course, make sure to put your opacity back if you wonder why this isn't working anymore. So any of these adjustment layers can be fixed by just drawing on the mask. Like I said, white to reveal, black to conceal.